Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on continual service improvement. My name is Aisha Sardar, and I'm the founder of Public Allies. Like you all know, Public Allies was established so we can help and support the most vulnerable members of our society to overcome their challenges. And in the process, we have been doing educational series, educational webinars in order to educate and create awareness so it'll help people reduce their stress and anxiety when it comes to personal and professional lives. So today with us, we have KASHIF BAIG, who is an IT professional, and he's also the co-founder of Public Allies. So to say a little bit about KASHIF BAIG, he's an IT professional with over 19 years of experience in service delivery, project management, customer relationship management, quality assurance, and continual service improvement and audits. His experience has been across various industries such as BFSI, banking, financial services, and insurance, utilities, traditional, coal-based, hydroelectric and nuclear energy, retail and consumer goods. He's worked for multinational companies such as Dell, IBM, Oracle, Fujitsu, and HPE in various countries spanning the globe like USA, Canada, UK, Germany, Singapore, and South Africa. Kashif has been an active member of the Pickering community and has volunteered and participated in various social service initiatives, not only in Canada, but in India, South Africa, and other places. Kashif believes that a community is as healthy as its weakest and most vulnerable members. The best sign of a vibrant and thriving community is when the members of the community feel happy and proud to live here and at the same time feel like their voices are heard. He currently sits on the Diversity Advisory Board of DRPS, and I have a lot more to say about him, but let's hear from him today about the continual service improvement. Over to you, Kashif.
Thank you for having me here today, Aisha. So here today, I'd like to talk to you about a topic called continual service improvement. This is something that I've been involved with quite a lot over the years, and it has assumed greater and greater importance across a wide variety of industries. Like many things in the world that we lived in, the beginnings were small. Some of these were discovered by accident, and some of these were specific to certain industries to begin with. But after people started to realize the benefits, it rolled across to various other industries across different geographies, and people start to fine tune some of the methods, some of the processes that they started off with. And right now, we have a whole lot of different tools, techniques, and methodologies that people can refer to. So, without further ado, let's just start off with the presentation. Aisha, please let me know once you can see my screen.
Yes, I see it.
All right. So the topic du jour is CSI or continual service improvement. This is what I'd like to briefly touch upon today. We define what is a service. We define what does improvement of the service mean. We discuss the differences between continuous and continual. Believe me, this is not just hyperbole, but there is a distinct difference between these two and the approaches that we need to employ for these two. Then we actually go into the meat of the presentation by defining what CSI actually means. Then we touch upon why it's important for us to do CSI, what are the benefits that we hope to get from CSI. Then we look at the actual process or the steps or the procedures or the methodologies that can be employed to do CSI. Some of the most common tools and techniques that are currently being used. There are a lot more, but I've just briefly touched upon a few of those. Perhaps in future webinars, we can pick and select the ones which people want to know more about, and I can deliver a presentation about those as well. And we end with some of the main CSI tips and tricks that you can employ to reduce the time, reduce the effort, reduce the burden for you to start off on a brand new CSI process in your organization, or perhaps to improve or tweak or slightly modify the CSI process that you already have so that you can leverage it to gain more benefits. You can perhaps reduce it to a far simpler number of steps which can be adopted by a wider number of people in your organization. So let's start with the first step. What exactly we mean by the term service? There are different ways of defining what the term service means. At its very basic, it could be as defined here as the act of helping someone. Like, for example, I was driving down the road, I saw somebody hit in an accident, I helped them up, I helped them get up right back on their vehicle, or I saw that they were slightly knocked off course. I checked with them, make sure they were fine. I called 911. So that's the kind of service that you rendered. Or, for example, I have the local YMCA chapter in my community. I go and I perform volunteer service there. Perhaps I have the Canadian Legion in my community. I go and help out the veterans there. That is the kind of service that you deliver. We also have a kind of service that is delivered by people in our community or organizations in our community. This service is defined by providing a service where you are not expecting any benefit in return. Like, for example, you have utility services here. Many organizations, many communities render these services at cost, wherein they don't hope to earn a profit from their community members. The other kind of definition of service could also be that you're trying to service an equipment that you already have. For example, your car, or for example, your sprinkler system, or suppose you're in manufacturing organization. You have a manufacturing utility there, like a lathe or a drilling machine. You get it serviced regularly to keep it in proper working order. However, when it comes to business and veering towards the topic of this presentation, when we actually talk about service, what do we mean? We broadly define the kind of businesses that we encounter on a day-to-day basis into two broad categories. The first one could be lumped together into businesses that manufacture goods. The main businesses which actually manufacture tangible, usable products. The other way of defining businesses is grouping businesses is under the services sector. Manufacturing or goods related business, I've outlined a few of those here. Like, for example, you have the laptop that I'm using on. It's a good that is actually manufactured by HP, my current organization. But you also have other industries, like, for example, agriculture, where the actual produces the crops and the vegetables and the fruits and the produce that we eat. You have animal husbandry, the dairies that supply us milk and cheese. You have forestry, fishing, etc. The services industry is where we are trying to focus here right now. These are industries where you don't have a tangible product, or some of them, they have a product, but actually the ultimate aim of these organizations is to provide a service and offering to the customer to fulfill a need. Like, for example, the banking services industry. Why do we use a bank in the basic essence of the term, right? We have money, we have cash in terms of bank notes, or we have cash in the form of coins, or we have gold in the form of coins or ingots. Why do we need the bank for? We could very well keep it at home. But the investment that it would take for us to have a vault, a very secure vault, which is impregnable, which is going to deter potential would-be robbers from trying to steal our hard-earned assets, our hard-earned cash, our hard-earned gold. Plus the security that I need to ensure that it is protected at all times. So what does a bank do? Bank says, I will offer you those services. I will offer you the option of having your money saved with me. Whenever you want to use your money, you can approach me at one of my several branches. You can go to the teller, you can show a proof of ID, and I will give you a mechanism for withdrawing the money. The mechanism is I'll give you a bank account and a bank account number, which you tell the teller, saying that this is my bank account number. I like to perhaps make a withdrawal. This is the amount of money that I'd like to withdraw. The bank teller would check against the records to make sure I have uh, fulfilled the needs for identification, whether I have the correct bank account number, whether I have the proper ID. Then the teller would check the balance available in my account, whether I am eligible to indeed withdraw the amount that I'm looking for, and they would process my request. So the bank is providing the service of a secure location to save your money and giving you the ability to withdraw and deposit money as you require. The healthcare industry, for example, the hospital, you go to the hospital. What is it that the hospital is offering you? The hospital is actually serving you health. It's not a tangible community. You're sick, you go to the doctor will check you up, he'll do a diagnosis. After the diagnosis, he'll prescribe a set of medication for you to get over. So, what is it the doctor is offering you or the healthcare industry is offering you? The product or the service that they're offering is your health. So these industries which offer services like this, for example, the hospitality industry, you go to a hotel. What do you seek from the hotel? You book a room, you go, you get some rest overnight. You perhaps use the facilities, for example, the swimming pool. Or for example, you go, you need a good night's rest followed by a shower. You need to have a good filling breakfast before you check out of the hotel. That is the service that the hospitality industry is offering you. A good night rest. That is the good of the service that they're offering. So service, the broad way in which we try to define service, initially the way we did the act of helping someone or fulfilling a public need or keeping a machine working in good proper working order. Those, other than those, the main thrust or the main focus when we talk about services for industry is what we've just learned about banking, about healthcare, about hospitality, etc. So if we have to distill it down, from a business perspective, the way we define a service is something that meets a need or fulfills a demand. For example, when we wanted to make sure that our money, our cash is safe or our gold bullion is safe, there was a clamor not just from me but from my neighbor, perhaps from somebody 3 blocks over, somebody else in the community. So there is an organization, for example, RBC or Scotiabank or TD, that stepped up and saying that, okay, I see this demand for people to keep their money secure. I will fulfill that demand by creating an entity called the bank, wherein I will have a secure vault. I'll have people manning the vault, manning the branch, who will be able to assist customers who are walking in and out. The other, what I would refer to as a proper definition of service is, it is a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes that they want to achieve without the actual ownership or specific costs and risks. For example, let's go back to the prior discussion we had about the hospital. What is it that the customer wants? The outcome that they are looking for is to get back to proper health, the way they were before they fell sick. That is what they want to achieve. However, they don't want to have the specific cost that would be required for them to achieve this. For example, they don't want to keep a doctor on call with them 24/7. That would be very expensive. They don't want to incur the cost of having a CAT scan machine installed in their house. They wouldn't want to have an X-ray machine available to them just for their exclusive use so that they can go and zap themselves whenever they need. So without taking ownership of these associated costs and risks, they still want to achieve the outcome. So service is a business which helps them achieve that outcome without having each customer bear the cost of the additional equipment that they would require. The cost of this is borne by the service, and it is obtained back from the customer. It is recouped back from its customers a little by little over a period of time. Now that we've had a good introduction about what a service actually is, let's proceed to the next step. What is service improvement? Why do we need to improve a service? Suppose I am an entity, a service-oriented business. I've just started my organization. I've identified a need in the community to fulfill a certain service. So I've started that particular business to fulfill this need for the community. And I've been delivering this service perhaps for 3 months, 6 months, a year, couple of years. Things have been going swimmingly. But then there could be so many external factors which could act or which could perhaps show me whether the service that I'm delivering is up to scratch, whether it's still relevant, do I need to make any modifications? For example, I have a competitor which comes up, and this competitor is offering the same service that I deliver. but perhaps the competitor is doing it at a lesser cost. Or perhaps the amount of time that customers have to wait to get their services delivered for me is far greater than what the competitor is offering. For example, if a customer has to wait 4 hours at my business, the competitor is promising them that they will get in and out of there in 2 hours, right? Plus, there could also be situations where new technology comes into the market. I've started this service business. For example, I am a retail store, like a Metro or a Walmart. I've invested in all these different machines to help me deliver the services to the customer. But then, after doing a lot of this investment, 2 years down the line, I discover that many of the machines that I invested in are frankly obsolete right now. I didn't have the time, or I did not want to invest more. I did not want to upgrade my machines as quickly as I could have, because I thought that I have still not recouped the cost of my investment. I'd like to run it for a few more years. Perhaps I'll be able to then take a decision whether I want to upgrade the machines. But now I suddenly discover, because of this new software which has come into the market, or this new point of sale machine which is available right now, or this new 360-degree camera which also has, say, facial recognition built into it. So all of those things I've never thought about or I've never invested, and suddenly I discover that I am totally off the ball here. I should have gone in and got those new equipment, but if I do so now, it's going to have a tremendous impact to my bottom line, because I have still not depreciated the previous expense that I have already put in when I started my business. So this is where service improvement comes in. Service improvement is the gradual process, is the gradual act of trying to continually improve the service that you provide. These improvements could be in trying to reduce the actual input costs for you that you incur to deliver these services to your customer. How do you reduce costs? One way is to try and reduce the number of steps involved, or try to reduce the effort that is incurred in trying to actually deliver the services to the customers. You can do that by perhaps identifying steps or activities in your service delivery. Try to identify things, some of these activities which are perhaps redundant, or which don't add a lot of value, or things which do not justify the amount of time taken compared to the value that they deliver. Perhaps there is a simpler way of doing it. Perhaps I can reduce the human interaction in that, try to automate some of those particular tasks. Instead of have somebody take a sheet of paper and scribble down notes on it, I'd rather have them open up a laptop and start collating all that information in an Excel spreadsheet. So those are the kind of ways I can try and reduce steps. Or another way of reducing costs is to reduce the actual time taken to perform some of these tasks. Like, for example, I have to move a piece of equipment, or I have to move a piece of goods or manufactured part, that for the final manufactured good to be assembled, I have to move one piece of equipment from one room to the other. But the room A, from where I need to move the part to the room Z, is right at the other end of the warehouse. So how can I do to reduce this time taken? Either I can give, if I do not want to restructure the layout of my warehouse by trying to recreate A near Z or Z near A, I can actually have a method wherein I can transport those goods faster. I can perhaps give them a smoother wheelbarrow, or perhaps I can give them a golf cart that can hop in and go there. Or I can try and tell them, okay, why don't you, instead of moving each part one by one as soon as it's ready, perhaps why don't you collate 5 of them and ship them together? Things like those. I can try and reduce the time taken to for each of these steps that are involved in the manufacture. The other one is perhaps it ties in with the actual costs that are incurring. Like, for example, I have invested in Office 365, quite expensive for a business, for the number of licenses that I require. But then I suddenly discover the beauty of Google Docs, completely free. So I go and I try and install those. Things like those. Try and identify opportunities where I can reduce it. For example, I've been trying a particular brand of lubricant for my machine, but then I suddenly discover through my research on YouTube that there is another brand of lubricant which is perhaps 15% cheaper for me in the long run. So I invest in that. So gradually try and reduce the costs. The other way is, instead of focusing on the cost, perhaps try and focus on improving the outcome for the customer. If you remember, when we defined service, we said service is nothing but facilitating outcomes that the customer is looking for, right? So what is the customer approaching you for? For what service is the customer actually your customer? So one way to improve the outcome is to add more value to the outcome. Like, for example, the customer is approaching you to have a particular service performed for a particular price, but you ensure you add a few sweeteners to the deal, saying that, hey, for example, I am a service which is offering, say, your credit history for your banking information. So how your credit has been, and I give you a certain credit rating. So you approach me, you buy your credit history. I not only supply you a credit history, but perhaps I add in a sweetener saying that, hey, you paid only for your service credit history. But what I could do is maybe I could give you credit monitoring for 6 months for free, wherein I will scan the internet to make sure your SIN is not being abused. There's nobody, if there is any event which might perhaps have a negative impact to your credit rating, I would bring it to your attention right away, and I'll offer this to you free of charge. So that's adding a little more utility, a little more value to the outcome that the customer is actually getting from you. The other one is to actually improve the quality of the outcome without increasing the cost to the customer, without increasing the final selling point of your service. Like, for example, if your offering is, if you're a hotel in the hospitality industry, you offer a softer bed, a softer mattress, right? You offer earlier check-in times, later checkout times. You offer complimentary breakfast. Along with the complimentary breakfast, you perhaps add in a sweetness saying that when people are checking out, you give them a free gift basket to remember you by. Perhaps give them a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates, things such as those. The other way you could improve the outcome is to increase what is known as the usability of the outcome. So this is, I've defined it as increasing the utility, or perhaps having that particular outcome provide multiple uses for you. For example, right now you are, suppose, a manufacturer of a wrench. So you have a wrench which is used to loosen or tighten bolts, or perhaps work with pipes or plumbing. But then what you do along with the wrench, at the other end of the handle, you perhaps add the option to being able to use it as a spanner, so that you can you're improving or increasing the number of ways in which your outcome could be utilized without a lot of cost to the customer. So the customer sees this as well. Hey, I'm paying for A, but I'm getting A plus B for free. The other one is to work on enhancing or increasing customer satisfaction. How is this achieved? The earlier factors that we've spoken about, by adding more value, by boosting the quality or increasing usability, all of them will have direct impact to customer experience, customer satisfaction. But the other way is to have an ability to reach back to the customer and find out what the customer values most. Try to get feedback from the customer. Like, for example, the customer calls in and he utilizes your services, he gets the services, he hangs up, right? You get back to the customer and you ask, what was it that you like most about your interaction with us today? What was it that irritated you the most? The answers could be very wide ranging, but they are very eye opening as well. They could be very simple. Like, for example, the customer says, I called you, I waited on hold for 5 minutes. It wasn't so bad. Some companies have made me stay on hold for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes. 5 minutes isn't so bad, but I would prefer it perhaps if it wasn't 5 minutes, if it was lesser than that. So, or some customers would say, I was on hold for 5 minutes, but the whole music that you have, I really did not fancy that. Or some customers will say, I was on hold, but I was never told during the time that I was on hold that I would be on hold for so many minutes. If I was told that you are the next caller in line, or you are the third caller in line, your approximate wait time is perhaps 5 minutes. The wait would have been far more bearable for me. So you take these kind of feedback from the customer. Or, for example, you are manufacturing a particular product and it comes in certain colors. One of the customers says, I wish you would avoid the use of this bright red paint on your product. It kind of reminds me of blood. Not nice. Why did you change that shade a little bit? Right? Things such as those. So having this tie-in back to the customer, trying to solicit customer feedback and act on that information is also going to help you improve your service in the long run. Now that we've spoken about what exactly is service improvement, let's try and define what is continual service improvement. So if you see, we're adding terms to the definitions that we've been doing, haven't we? We started off with defining the term service. Then we define what is service improvement. Now we're adding the term continual to it. Continual service improvement, or CSI, it transforms the act of service improvement into a repeatable method or process. So service improvement can be a one-time effort, right? A one-time activity. You have a service you're delivering, you improve on that service. But the process of CSI transform this one-time act, or perhaps a 2 or 3 time act, into a continual process. And what does continual mean? It's a repeatable process, and it needs to go on continually. Moving on, we introduced the term continual in the previous slide. So let's talk about the difference between continual and what is continuous. Why don't we want to do continuous service improvement, and why do we want to do continual service improvement? Continuous, the definition of the word means something that keeps happening continuously or keeps happening repeatedly or without interruption. Like, for example, I've given a few of the examples: the heartbeat, or the way a river flows, or the motion of the planets, the way Earth revolves around the sun, etc. Continual, on the other hand, is something that occurs very frequently, but there are definite breaks in the process. There are definite start times and definite end times. The start times get kicked off with what we would refer to as a trigger, something which kicks off the start time, and there is a definite end time. And the end time is when the the activity that we hope for to achieve, or the result that we hope to achieve, has been achieved. It stops there. But then it doesn't stop and die away. After a little period of time, it starts off again. That is the difference between continuous and continual. The reason why it has to be continual and not continuous is, for example, a business exists to perform, to manufacture a certain good or to deliver a certain service and to earn money from that, right? At the end of the day, your goal is to provide a service to fulfill a need and to secure remuneration or to secure payment for whatever has been delivered to the end customer. That is the core of your business. That is the essence of your business. The reason why you're trying to improve the service delivered by your business is to see that if you can reduce costs, earn better profit, or you can improve the outcome so that you can earn customer loyalty, you can increase sales, things of that nature. So the core of your business is to provide the service. However, if you get into the business of continuous service improvement, you lose focus from what is the actual core of your business, right? So if you're in this particular mode, okay, my business is to provide continuous service improvement, that is not what your actual business stands for. So continual service business keeps your eye on the ball, saying that, okay, this is the service I'm delivering. I delivered this service in this way. Then I performed a service improvement initiative. I reduced cost by 10%. So that improved my bottom line, and I was able to earn greater profit. Now that I have done this for a little bit of time, now let's look for the next step in the process. Let's see what I can do to perhaps improve the outcome. Okay, let me improve the outcome. How has that outcome helped? It has helped me increase sales by 10%. That's great. So let me now focus on the next thing. So that's the beauty of continual service improvement. It keeps you focused on what you need to deliver as a goods producing business or a service business, but also lets you know that you have to continually keep improving upon it to improve your bottom line or your top line. All right. The previous slides that we discussed were more from the definition perspective. This is where we actually get into the meat of the presentation. This is why we are all here. So let's start off with CSI. CSI, as we defined in the previous slide, it transforms the act of service improvement into a repeatable method or process. That's how we define CSI in the previous slide. Let's try and maybe make it a bit more scientific, a bit more the definition that is more widely accepted in the industry. So CSI is defined as the method to identify, and execute opportunities to make or deliver services better, and to objectively measure the effects of these efforts over time. So, if you break it down, the definition, it can be broken down into two parts. The first part is CSI is a method to identify and execute opportunities to make or deliver services better. So, if you pause here for a second, what are we trying to do in CSI? We first identify what needs to be improved, what we feel our services lacking in, what are the improvements that we can make, what are the enhancements we can make to our goods or services. Once we identify the opportunities, then we identify what I can do, what steps I can take, or what steps I can use to execute on those options or execute on those solutions that I've identified to improve my the opportunities that I've identified for improvement. I actually execute those solutions. And then we move on to the next step, to objectively measure the effects of these efforts over time. So number one, we identified the opportunities for improvement. Number two, we identified the solutions to improve. We actually implemented these solutions. And very importantly, number three, we're actually measuring the effect of these solutions, of these improvements, and we are measuring them over a period of time. This is very important because I identify what needs to be improved. I go ahead and I fix it. After fixing it, if I don't check how effective the solution I implemented it, or for example, my initial goal was trying to achieve an improvement of 10%. After I've implemented my solution, if I do not hit the target of 10%, then that means that what I set out to achieve hasn't really been achieved. Suppose I fall way short of at 7% or 8%. Then I determined that either the goal that I had set off with initially of 10% was too ambitious for me, or perhaps the solution that I implemented did not actually address me achieving the 10% goal, or perhaps what I'm measuring isn't what I was supposed to measure. I'm perhaps being wide of the mark in measuring. So CSI helps you establish this boundary, saying that first identify what you want to fix. Second, go ahead, fix it, develop a solution, fix it. And third, check to make sure or measure to make sure things are okay or you achieve what you wanted to achieve, the effectiveness of your solution. So it is a very simple concept, right? Based in very simple terms. It's what you want to achieve, what you want to fix, get a solution to fix it, and measure whether what you fixed was effective. So this underlying concept of these 3 points was actually put forth by a management consultant in the mid 1950s called W. Edwards Deming. So he came up with this concept called the PDCA circle. This is known as the Deming circle. It's also called the PDCA circle. As you can see on the right, PDCA stands for plan, do, check, and. This is the very same thing that we just discussed in the previous point, but it's just set out in very formal terms as different steps in a process or a method. So in the plan step, what do? We identify what needs to be done, what areas of improvement that I want to hit. In the do phase, what do? I actually go ahead and I execute the solution to fix what I identified in the plan phase. In the check part, what do? The measuring thing. I go and measure whether what I did in the do phase actually met the objectives or not, how wide of the mark I was, or how close to what I wanted to achieve was I able to get to. And in the act phase, I take the results from the check phase. I see, okay, based on the results, what I did was great. Now, is there anything I need to tweak in my regular day-to-day process to make it a part of a process and not to just make it a part of uh, the PDCA cycle, my continuous service improvement cycle? The advantage of the Deming circle is to ensure that we formalize this 4-step process, the PDCA cycle, formalize it and make it a part of your regular day-to-day running of your organization. In the next step, I've identified or I've outlined how exactly CSI is actually done. There are broadly 7 steps, or the questions that you need to answer in the CSI step. The first one is define what you should measure. For example, if you're in an industry which is based purely on customer service, like for example, you are in an industry which is identified in providing a service such as Service Ontario. You go to Service Ontario to fulfill a certain need, either update your licenses or update your address, etc. So what you should measure? You should measure the time that the customers actually come or people come line up in your office, the amount of time it takes for each agent in your office to actually fulfill the customer's needs, etc., etc. Whether you are able to fulfill the need at the very first interaction, whether you have to have them come back again, whether there is some information that is missing. They stand in line for quite a number of hours, and then when they actually approach you, they see that the amount of that they're actually missing on certain information that they were supposed to give you in the first place. This is what you should measure. But based on the technology that you have, based on what you are able to actually measure, that's an important thing too. It's the difference between what is good to have and what is need to have, right? Good to have is what you should measure. What are the different ways in which you can track and identify and measure and put metrics on things? What you can measure is what is actually doable. After you've identified what you can measure, then you actually go ahead and gather the data to be able to do the measurement. How do you gather the data? You, for example, if you get back to the Service Ontario example, you have somebody who actually counts the number of people who are there in the queue at any point in time, for example, or somebody who's actually monitoring the camera at that time and telling you, okay, at 11 o'clock, there were 7 people in line in front of kiosk number 3. But then at 11:30, this number grew up to 17. At 12 o'clock, this number went down to 13. So you have somebody actually tracking things like that. So you're gathering the raw data. Once you've gathered the data, you need to actually process the data. Process the data is putting the data into a format which will allow you to perform any number of filtering, to allow you to perform uh, being able to draw inferences from it. For example, putting it up in a dashboard, creating a chart out of it, creating a trend line, etc. That's processing the data. Once you've processed the data, you start analyzing the data. You try and identify trends. For example, every day between 1 and 2 p.m., the number of people waiting is the longest. For example, a particular type of request seems to take 15 minutes, the longest amount of time. Or this particular type of request is the quickest, it's handled in 45 seconds. You start and identify trends like that. Once you have identified those, you start to work upon the solutions to how to mitigate those. What lessons that I can learn from the request that is identified or fulfilled in 45 seconds, how I can apply those to the request which takes 15 minutes. What is different from the time, say, before 1 p.m., when the queue length seems to be manageable, people are moving quicker, and why does the pileup happen between 1 to 2 p.m.? What can I do to address those? You identify solutions. For example, one of the reasons could be that at 1 to 2 p.m., before 1 p.m., you have 9 kiosks available. But just at 12:30, you have 6 people taking off for lunch. So the number of kiosks available gets down from 9 to 3. And there's an obvious pileup happening because of that. What do? You stagger the lunch times of the people who are taking break at the same time. Things like this. You identify solutions and you deploy them. Once you're done, you don't sit on your laurels. You see how things are working and you measure it. If you remember, the way we defined CSI was you evaluate or you measure the effects of your improvement over a period of time. You see how the improvement is still holding. The value it delivered to you in the very first week, is the value still being delivered in week number 3? Is the value still being delivered in week number 30? See how it is going. See what small manual tweaks you can make to the improvements you carried out. So essentially, this is what CSI is all about. Identifying what you need to measure and what you can measure. You process or gather the information that you require to be able to present the data in a proper format. From the data, you identify things which can be improved, which readily jump at you, which make themselves very apparent and very obvious, things that can be fixed, and then you go ahead and you fix those. And after you fix those, You continue to keep measuring and keep checking to see how you are doing. Right now that we've defined CSI, we've had a look at what CSI is all about, what are the different basic steps that are involved in CSI. Let's step back a bit and try to see why exactly do we need to do CSI? What are the potential benefits that could accrue from doing CSI? The very first thing is we can improve the cost effectiveness and efficiency of the services that we deliver. If you remember, we spoke about trying to reduce input costs, we spoke about trying to remove redundant steps, we spoke about automating some of the activities. So, by improving the cost effectiveness and efficiency of delivery of a service, we enable organizations to achieve greater profits because of the reduced expense that they are incurring in the actual capital impacts in their input costs. They're able to allocate the money that they had thought of or budgeted for the initial investment. They're able to divert it into other activities, for example, improve marketing or improve design of their website, or perhaps hiring more salespeople, things of that nature. This will definitely provide long-term benefits to the customer, long-term benefits to the organization, keep them in a much healthier frame of mind financially. The other benefit of doing CSI is you improve the amount or the quantity of the output that you produce. You also improve the quality. How do you improve the quantity of output? Because by reducing unnecessary, unrequired steps, by trying to automate some of these steps, you're able to produce more per hour. You're able to produce more per employee. So your output exponentially increases. You're able to deliver more amount of goods, more amount of services, more amount of value to the customer in the same amount of time. For example, in the previous example that we spoke about, Service Ontario, if we are able to reduce the effort that is required for fulfilling the service, which takes 15 minutes, from 15 minutes to 12 minutes, that means for every interaction, we save 3 minutes, and over a period of hour, we are able to save 12 minutes. Perhaps squeeze in a fourth or a fifth interaction in the same amount of time I could have taken for 4 interactions. We also improve the quality of the service by keeping our focus on the customer satisfaction, customer improve the ability of a customer to be a repeat customer for us, how happy they are with this, and by continuously keeping an eye out on what the competition has to offer, by keep improving our services to match or go beyond what our competitors are offering. And also, very important, it instills a culture of constant innovation within the organization. Each and every employee of the organization, right from the CEO and the president to the lowliest employee of the organization, constantly is on a lookout on how to improve things. Like, for example, I told you the example of the moving a part for a product from room A to room Z, way across the organization. This is a real world example that I have seen myself, and how they overcame it is step number one, they actually had a runner in between. They relieved the employee that is working on in room A. They wanted him to continue working on the part in room A. They had somebody who was there whose only job was to collect the part from room A, run quickly, deliver it to room Z. This was the first interim thing that they did. It improved things a little bit, but it increased costs because they had to have one more person employed dedicated only for this particular activity. Next, what did they do? They said, okay, I don't want you to run across every first time. I want you to wait 3 times. Wait for 3 parts, then take 3 parts, go over there. Then they increased it to 5 parts. Then they thought, okay, maybe this is taking too long. Let me give him a wheelbarrow. So they gave him a wheelbarrow. He was taking 10, 15 parts at a time. Things was started to get better, but still could be done even better. And what the next step? They said they gave him an actual cycle, a cycle with a bit of just like you have a truck and a truck bed. This is a cycle with a cycle bed at the back, wherein he could haul 100 parts at one time. And cycle was much less effort for him rather than running around as well. Things of that nature. So you gradually, slowly, step by step, keep improving. And this particular idea actually came from one of the people who used to do housekeeping on the floor. It wasn't the engineers who came up with this solution on how to speed things. It's a person who used to mop the floor every day. He used to turn off the lights, make sure everything was clean. He came up with this idea of trying to improve the time, trying to see if he can rig up a bed to his cycle. to see how this could work, and it worked swimmingly well. The engineers actually tried to come up with solution of trying to dig tracks in the floor and trying to have dedicated tracks just for just for the wheelbarrow to flow smoothly. That would have still worked, but that was a costly solution. It would have taken time to implement. This did not take time, and it wasn't very costly. So this is what I mean by imbibing or transmitting this energy throughout the organization. When everybody feels that they have a stake, hey, how can I contribute to shave 30 seconds of this particular process? How can I contribute to save 50 cents of this end product? Once everybody chips in, you wouldn't believe the number of wonderful ideas that start flowing in from different parts of the organization. And that's what CSI is here for. It's to keep your eye on your core process, saying that I am here to deliver this service. And as an organization, I need to earn profit. But how do I keep improving this profit? How do I keep a step up on my competitors? How do I keep my customers happy so that they not only stay with me, but through word of mouth, they get me more customers? This is what CSI helps you do. So many organizations tend to treat CSI as a burden or something that is unnecessarily being foisted upon them by the upper management. But no, when you start getting into the nitty gritty and when you start doing CSI, the very first project that you do, that will show you the benefits. And when you keep measuring it over a period of time, making small tweaks here and there, small improvements, the amount of benefit that you start seeing in the bottom line and the top line are enormous. All right. So far we've defined what is a service. We've defined why do we need to improve a service. We've defined the difference between continuous and continual. We've had a look at what is continual service improvement. We've had a look at some of the main steps that are required in continual service improvement. And we've also seen what are the benefits of doing CSI. Now, CSI, there is no one stop shop. There is no one process that can be taken on and legoed or bolted on any organization. Each organization can come up with their own process, can come up with their own methodology, can come up with their own tools, because it could very well be unique to their to the industry that they are in, to the culture that the organization is from, to the geography that they are servicing, to their end customers, etc. But I've tried and gathered a few tools and techniques which are quite popular in the organization. These also were developed by different organizations at different points in time. They used it, they first developed it, they used it, they found the benefits. Some of these sort of percolated across different competitors within their industry, then hopped across industries. Other industries also started using it. Once they got it, then they started working on their own little tweaks to it. So I have a term which I used to use very frequently when I used to train people in ITIL. So this was called adopt and adapt. So you adopt the process from another organization or other entity, you deploy it in your organization, and then you start adapting it to suit yourself, to suit your uniqueness, to suit your processes. So these terms, these methods that I'm going to briefly touch upon will give you an idea of some of the things that are going on. Perhaps at a future time, once Aisha permits, we can have individual sessions on some of those based on which ones people want to know more about. So let's start off with the first one that I'd like to talk to you about is catch ball. It is one of the simplest ones which was developed. The main purpose of catch ball, if you remember the very last point we touched about in the previous slide, trying to have a pervasive culture of continuous improvement throughout the organization, right from the person who opens the gate or to the factory or to your office in the morning, to the CEO in the corner suite. Everybody should get enthused, should imbibe that spirit, that passion of trying to improve what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, reduce the time even by a few seconds, reduce the cost even by a few cents. Try to one up their customer, my to one up their competitor. My competitor sold 50 last quarter. I'm going to sell 51. Come what, I have to make it 51. How do I make it 51? Let me work harder. Let me improve things here. Let me reduce the time. Let me improve my output. Things of that nature. So catchball started from that perspective, saying that, hey, I am somebody who who's in the upper echelons of the company. I sit in one of the CXO suites, or I'm a senior director or a senior manager somewhere. I've earned my MBA from some Ivy League school. I've studied everything that needs to be studied from a business perspective. I have loads of experience. I am the end all and be all of what it comes to improving service. So instead of trying to have ideas generated only from these folks who are doing these, who sit in these privileged positions, not to say that they cannot come up with wonderful ideas, I'm sure they can, but also to give the opportunity to solicit ideas, for to create a sort of sponge where which could go around the organization and start sucking up or collating or getting all these wonderful little tweaks, wonderful little things that can be done to make things life easier for the employees, to reduce costs, to improve output, to increase the reputation of the organization, and ultimately to make the organization more successful, keep improving their service. So the idea of catchball is, for example, somebody in the upper echelons, a project manager or a CSI manager, he creates a project, a service improvement project, and that is the ball. Once he creates the project, he identifies what is the goal, what is required to be achieved. For example, the requirement to be achieved is, we need to enhance our customer satisfaction from current 7.5 out of 10 to say 8 out of 10. And we need to do this within the next 3 months. So this is the ball, this is the project he done. And what he does, he throws it to the office next door, metaphorically, of course. So the office next door says, okay, this is what is being attempted right now. Do I have anything that I can think of right now? Okay, maybe I can add a couple of points to this. Add a couple of points to the ball. And what does he do? He takes the ball, tosses it over to his colleague. Colleagues takes the ball. Okay, already some wonderful ideas here. This is what needs to be done. Maybe they haven't thought of this. Let me tag this on also. This person adds his idea, ball is thrown again. And this way, the ball goes from one part of the organization to the other part of the organization. Like I said, metaphorically, most of the time it could be through a memo or an email chain which is circulated. But people keep adding ideas, keep looking at what other people have recommended. And they start thinking, okay, these guys are talking specifically from the perspective of people from this particular department. Most of the ideas are coming from the marketing team, but nobody is taking the sales team into consideration. Let me add some ideas from the sales perspective. Then it goes over to the shop floor. Shop floor guy says, hey, all of you guys are sitting in air conditioned offices, you're trying to come up with ideas. Let me tell you what actually happened on the shop floor, what we can do from a shop floor perspective. So everybody start pitching in ideas, and the ball ultimately goes back to the person who has ownership of that particular idea, who started it all. And once that person is, then they start gleaning through all the different ideas. They start, if you remember, going back to the CSI process, they go from what should be done. So these are things which should be done. Then start filtering down to what can be done, what is practically possible to do. From those, then they prioritize, okay, what are the ones which give us the most bang for the buck? What are the ones which are the least expensive to do, the quickest to do? Start ranking them, start developing action item lists, start assigning owners, and start addressing them. That's the whole simple idea of catchball. Try to get everybody involved to start pitching in ideas. As I said, I'm just going to briefly touch upon these points. If you would like to know more about, please let Public Allies know, and I'm sure we can try and facilitate sessions about these in detail a little later. We can talk about the process in detail. We can talk about the different tools or products which are available in the marketplace, which you can use. And like I said, always you go ahead and you adopt them, and then of course you adapt them. Not all of them would be 100% fit for you. Try to get 80% out of it. Bolt on your 20%. Make it work for you. The next one, this started from Japan, so very simple. Okay, the first thing is how to pronounce it. It's called Gemba, Gemba walk. What it means is, you have an employee, like I said, sitting in some corner suite, who has the best interests of the organization at heart. But these are not the people who actually roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty in the day-to-day running of the day-to-day manufacture. For example, you have a bank. The bank president is not there in the bank branch dealing with customers, end customers, right? He has tellers for that. He has financial advisors. He's sitting in his office in smoking a cigar or whatever. But then at the end of the day, the people who are actually interfacing with the customer, the idea of Gemba walk is, these are the people who have the best ideas because they are right at the cutting edge of the interaction point or the inflection point of your business and your customers, right? They are the ones who are right in the thick of things. What this means is the manager or the responsible supervisor, they have an idea, they have they allocate certain amount of time to actually observe, to see how these interactions are happening, to see if they can pick up things which are perhaps not going as right, if they can perhaps sense some sort of frustration from the point of the customer in dealing with your employees, or there is some sort of issue that your employees are having in trying to provide services in a timely manner, in a more efficient, in a smiling manner to your customers. Then talking to them, saying that, hey, what's wrong? What can I do to help you make things better? What can I do to facilitate your job? This information and trying to get that done. So this is a very, very low cost activity, right? It is just like somebody, the supervisor, taking the trouble of getting up from his chair in a branch, going, standing next to the teller, or discreetly observing it from a distance, or talking to the financial advisor, or maybe sitting in when they have a discussion with the customer. That's all it takes. But wonderful ideas can be gleaned from there. So on a day-to-day basis, like for example, the customer says, hey, I've been standing here for 15 minutes. I'm a senior. I find it really difficult. Perhaps you could arrange some chairs for us to sit. Maybe you could allow us, or maybe you could have a different queue for seniors, or maybe you could prioritize the tellers dealing with seniors quickly, right? For example, I'm here, it's a hot sunny day, but I see that you don't have water for me to take a drink, or perhaps the water that you have, it's not cold enough. Maybe some provision of cold water might help, or maybe the AC, the way the AC is blowing, the air is being circulated perhaps direct to the tellers. It's not quite reaching the people in the queue right in the middle of the office. Perhaps you could make things better that way. These are simple little tweaks which can go a long way. Or for example, I tried to park your car in the parking lot, but the way the parking lot is designed is not the most efficient. I have to park, for example, 500 meters away, and I have to walk all the way here. It's not good. Or it's snowing right now, and you guys have not removed the snow from your parking lot or from the sidewalk. It makes for a very hazardous walk for me to actually enter. Or for example, I go to your ATM, and every time I try and withdraw money from the ABM or the ATM, I only see very high value denomination coins. I want $500 to be withdrawn, but I don't want to withdraw them in series of 100 notes. I want to be able to get $10 notes. I want to be able to get $5 notes, $20 notes, $50 notes also. Please try and rectify that. Things of this nature. And very, very simple. Just walking around, talking to the people in the queue, talking to your tellers, or just observing. See how things are going. And try and nip things in the bud and do these small little tweaks which can help improve service. Once again, very simple, very basic way of doing CSI. Okay, the third one. This is also started off from Japan in Toyota. Kanban. So what does this mean? What Kanban means is, if you remember when we discussed the example of trying to take a product from room A to room Z. So you many a time you have different parts of an organization, or what we would refer to as different verticals or different sections in an organization, or you have different lines of business. Like for example, you would have what we discussed: marketing, sales, manufacturing, your HR, security, IT, etc. You have different sections in the organization. Different sections in the organization. So whenever a product crosses, right, from one part of the organization to the other, you have to make sure that you track it. What is the in time? What is the expected end time for that product to cross over from the organization? Whether it met the quality that it is supposed to be there, whether it met the quantity requirements. And on the right side, I've given you an illustration of how exactly it is measured in the form of a Kanban card. It's very typical. You can modify it to suit your organization, to suit your requirement. And at the bottom, I've given you a Kanban card for an IT organization, also for a software development organization. So over here, you see what products or what features to be developed are there in the to-do column. Then the things which are currently being worked on by the developers in the in development column. The things which have passed in development and have been passed on to the testers, which are currently being tested, they're recorded in the in testing column. Things which have been finished testing, whatever recommendations have come from the testing team, have been rectified by the development team, retested, passed, have gone on to ready for release to be deployed, right? and the things which have been deployed recently. For example, in the past week, past month, past quarter, they are there in the release column. So each stage, each section, each line of business, each department in your organization is tracking when things came, when things went, what exactly was done. This was the quantity expected, was this quantity released. This was the amount of time it was expected to stay within my department, whether it overstayed, whether I was able to deliver it quickly, whether what was the defect rate. I was supposed to deliver 250 products with zero defects. How many was I able to deliver? Was I able to deliver all 250 with zero defects? Was I able to deliver 255 with zero defects? Or was I able to deliver only 250 but with 10 defects? So you're tracking everything at each point in time. Once again, very popular, very common, started off at Toyota, but is widely used. The main idea is you are able to make sure that there are no showstoppers or roadblocks, because everything flows through smoothly. No one department or no one section of your organization takes up more than its allocated or more than its fair share of the ultimate output, so that your organization is able to produce things in a better way in the proper allocated time. Now 5S, I've discussed this quite a bit with my wife earlier as well. So 5S is an organization method that was originally applied in manufacturing. And you can see on the right some of the terms. I've given the original Japanese terms and I've given the translated English terms as well. So what it means is it is a method of organization. It's a method of decluttering. It's a method of ensuring that everything is in its right place. Things do not uh, become a hazard. Things do not unnecessarily, unfortunately, do not try to block up the pathways, as it were, metaphorically and literally, so that things move smoothly. Similar to Kanban as well, but here what they're trying to do is they're trying to formalize what are the main things you need to keep in mind. For example, the first S is the sort. So what does it mean? It means the things which should be near you are the ones that which you actually use and which you use regularly. For example, if you're trying to assemble a pen, right? You have the body of the pen which actually holds the ink. Then you have the refill which goes inside. You have the cap. You should only have those. You shouldn't have a book, or you shouldn't have something else which is completely irrelevant to what you're trying to produce. Only what you need is there right at hand. That's sort. Straighten. So what it means is what you need, you've sorted out the things and you've only kept the things that you need. In straighten, what you're trying to make sure is these things are readily available. You know exactly where these are, and you're not going to waste time searching for them when you need it. Like, for example, you know where exactly you put the caps or you put the handles on the caps for your pen. So you know, okay, if I go to box A, I'll find it over there. How you can do it, you can make sure you sort it, keep it box A, perhaps label it. Hey, this contains handles, and nothing else is put in there. Well, there's no use if you label the box, this contains handles, and you start putting something else in there. Right? So you need to make sure you straighten it and have only what is supposed to be there. You know exactly what is there, and you're able to reach it very quickly. The benchmark here of 30 seconds is useful, but that is what they're trying to convey. You don't waste a lot of time searching for things when you need them. You know exactly where they are, so you reduce that effort, reduce that wastage of time. The third S is shine. Once again, it is again similar. Try to declutter, try to make sure things are put properly there, and whatever you need is already ready. Like, for example, you need to use that handle on the cap of your pen. That handle needs to be polished, and it has to be polished in gold color. So you cannot scramble saying that, okay, now I need to assemble my pen. I know I've sorted it out. All the pen handles are over there. I've straightened it also by labeling the box saying that this contains pen handles. But when I reach in, when I pick up the pen handle, I see that it has been polished silver or it has not been polished. So at that point of time, during my process, I'm not going to take it, go all the way to the polishing machine, polish it golden, then come back and assemble. It says try to keep this already there. Try to think about what you will need so that you avoid these last minute surprises, last minute wastages of time. The next is standardized, right? So it is like, for example, in certain organizations, this becomes difficult to achieve because there are certain people who are really good at certain things. So they kind of style themselves as specialists in a particular type of work, saying that, okay, if you give me this particular piece of work, I am able to complete it in 30 seconds. But my colleague, who's a little rough around the edges, who takes more time, he might take a minute and a half. So what does this mean? It does not mean that, hey, I'll move the guy who takes far longer to some other part of the workshop, and I'll keep employing only the guy who does it in 30 seconds. No, it says standardize it so that everybody is able to perform the job. If the steps are absolutely repeatable, try and identify why that particular person is able to accomplish it in 30 seconds, why that person is taking so long, whether it is a lack of training, a lack of finesse, what exactly is causing the problem. Maybe this person is right-handed and this machine suits right-handed people. Maybe the person who takes longer time is left-handed. He's finding it difficulty. What can I do to overcome this difference? Things of that nature. And sustain. This is similar to what we had discussed previously as well in the previous CSI tools and methodologies that we spoke about a little while earlier. Try to make sure it comes naturally to people, looking for improvements, looking for similar tweaks, looking for things to reduce costs, looking for things to reduce time. It should come naturally to people, saying that, hey, this is a part of me right now. I keep doing every day. I'm constantly on the lookout. For example, I see that, okay, I come in every day. The office starts at 8 a.m. and the health keeping staff only come at 8:30. And while we are on the phone with a customer, or I am typing an email, or we are in the middle of a meeting, they start vacuuming. That's not right. So we try to make sure that there is as less impact on that. So one of the examples could be, why don't you finish things before 8 o'clock? Things of that nature, right? And you keep constantly measuring, constantly improving, and constantly on the lookout. Keep encouraging people, keep encouraging employees to see if they can come up with. I've worked in organizations where we used to have an idea of the month competition. There would be a mailbox where people could mail their ideas, saying that, okay, for this month perhaps we can do this. The best ideas would be published. The top 5, top 10 ideas would be published, and the best idea in terms of the maximum improvement obtained with least effort, least cost, that person would be rewarded. So the reward would be in terms of recognition, in terms of actual prize. It would add value to this person's rating at the end of the day, performance rating or productivity rating at the end of the year. So this is a way of encouraging it. So you try and build and foster this culture of innovation throughout your organization. That's what 5S is all about. Once again, like I said, if you need more information, if you're interested in knowing more about this, we can have a separate session on this. Next one, PDCA. We just briefly touched upon it. Quite a lot of things that we do in terms of quality improvement owe a lot to the efforts of Dr. Deming earlier. And he's the one who came up with this PDCA checklist, this PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Sometimes this is also referred to as the PDSA, the Plan, Do, Study Act, but I prefer the old way of going the PDCA route only. So the whole idea, if you remember what we discussed earlier, 4 steps: plan, do, check, act. Plan, identify what you need to improve and how you're going to improve it. Do, execute the actual solution that you came up in the plan phase. And here I've put in the brackets POC. It stands for proof of concept. Don't try to do a organization-wide big bang change. Pick a certain area, a small subset of where you want to target it. Deploy your solution. Deploy the activity or the plan you came up in the plan phase. See how it works. If it is great, roll it out on a more wider basis. If not, make a little tweak, make improvements, test it again in a small piece. Works, roll it out. So that's what I mean by POC. So plan, identify what needs to be improved, come up with a solution on how you're going to improve it. Do, actually implement what you came up with in the plan phase. Implement the solution. Check what we spoke about earlier. Measure. Gather the data, process the data, then try and analyze the data to come up with trends, come up with potential areas that the things have, whatever you implemented, they worked okay or not. And once, if it is not, go back to the drawing board, go back to the plan, right? Then in the act phase, once again, whatever you have done in the plan, do, check, right? See what needs to be tweaked. If something worked wonderfully well, okay, let's make it a daily part of our organization. Let's try and do this on a day-to-day basis. let's try and tweak. For example, let's assume you're using a certain equipment, right? For example, your company is involved in marketing, or so as part of that, you print a lot of brochures for your customers and you send it out. So the printers that you have for printing your brochures, they're quite good. The paper that you use is quite good. You start shipping it out. But one of your employees in, suppose, the delivery team, the ones who actually go and hand over these brochures, they identify that after a period of time, when these brochures are sent, they look good, glossy, nice, but they don't smell very nice. This person is right at the end of it, right? He's the person who's actually handling the brochures. He says, what if we come up with a type of paper which smells a little nicer than what we have right now? You go, you contact your paper suppliers and you tell them this is the challenge. They say, okay, it's well and good, you telling me smell good, but what kind of fragrance would you like? So you brainstorm. You say, okay, maybe the smell of pine is nice. Can you get me pine smelling paper? They say, okay, pine smelling paper will cost you 5 cents extra. Right now you're paying 10 cents, it will cost you 15 cents per paper. Then you think, you go back to the bunch, okay, will it make sense? Will it make a difference? You think the person who's delivering say, absolutely will make a difference, because the people who actually use it on a day-to-day basis, whenever they open the brochure, they smell it of pine. And they like opening it because it not only looks nice, feels nice, but even smells nice. So improvement in customer satisfaction gives you an edge over your competitor. You see, none of your competitors are doing something like that. So you say that, okay, let's try this right now. For one of our, we have 10 customers. For one customer, let's use the pine scented papers. So you print the brochures, you send it out, and you solicit feedback from the customer. Hey, how was it? We tried something new with our brochures this time. Did you like it? Was it good? Customer say, wonderful, wonderful. It's really nice compared to previously. So what do? You next time you say, okay, now that we've done this, we've run through the PDCA cycle for this. Everything's gone. We've got the feedback as well. Let's now make this a part of our regular process. So for all 10 customers, let's start using the same paper. Right? So you go back to your supplier saying that, okay, no, I want to replace your entire delivery of the strange smelling paper with the pine smelling paper. So earlier when I ordered a small subset, you offered me at 15 cents a paper, but now I'm ordering a lot more from you. So you need to reduce the cost. So I say, okay, because you're improving or increasing the number, the quantity that you're ordering from me, I'll offer it to you for 12 cents a paper. So this is the PDCA cycle. You plan, identify what needs to be improved, get hold of a solution that you're going to do to improve that situation. In the do, you actually implement it, check, you see whether it met the results that you were after. If it met the results, great. In the act phase, you roll it out across the organization, make it standard. If not, you modify it, you retweak it, and you go it again. And that is why you see it is a cycle. You see it rolling up and up on the slope over or on the right. So over a period of time, you keep doing these cycles over and over and over again. And you have these small little bumps in the road called standard, right? So that's what I meant. In the act phase, when things are going smoothly, you make it your standard. And then you keep going again. So it is a continual improvement cycle. Yes, DMAC, yeah, I'm sure some of you who are familiar with Six Sigma, or some of you who've tried to get more information about it, would have come across this term, and very similar to what we just discussed in the previous cycle. In Plan, Do, Check, Act, we have the 4 phases. Over here, we just have one more phase more than that, right? So here, instead of the Plan, Do, Check, Act, we have define, measure, analyze, improve, and check. So similar to the plan phase, what are we doing in define? We're trying to identify what needs to be improved. We're trying to identify, after we identify what needs to be improved, are we, in the first part, are we going to do a proof of concept at a small stage, or are we going to do it at a much larger scale? How many departments are we going to involve? How many outputs will be impacted? How many employees are going to be part of this particular effort? Based on that, you say, okay, let's get a team together. Okay, this team is going to work on this. This team will have representatives from each of the departments which are involved in this particular project. Then in the next part, measure. So you try and say, okay, before I start doing what I have to do to improve this particular thing, let me first get a baseline. A baseline means, how are things today? For example, I want to improve this particular process, this manufacturing process. Let me first get a baseline of how much time it takes to perform this process right now, how much effort, how many people are involved, how much does it cost, what is the output, etc., etc. So you form a baseline. This is what you do in the measure phase. In the analyze phase, you actually say that, okay, this is the particular problem that I have. So you define, that's what it's called, known as a problem statement, saying that, okay, right now my manufacturing process takes 1 hour. That's my problem statement. Then you do an RCA analysis. Okay, so why is it taking this long? It's taking this long because it is spending 5 minutes in this department, 5 minutes in this department, but it's taking 15 minutes in this department. It's taking 20 minutes in this department. So this is my root cause. What am I going to do? What is the improvement that I'm going to do? I'm going to focus on these two departments which are taking 15 and 20 minutes. I'm going to analyze each of the steps that they're taken, and I'm going to identify the redundant steps. I'm going to combine some steps, and I'm going to remove some of the redundant steps. So this is what I'm going to do. So that is your plan for improvement. Then in the improve phase, you're going to deploy the actual plan that you have for the improvement. You're going to go to these two departments, and you're going to actually combine some of those steps and remove some of the redundant steps. And in the check phase, you're just going to check your control. So you're going to go and check whether what you set out to achieve has been achieved or not, whether the root cause that you identified in the analyze phase has been addressed, whether the time taken for your process, you wanted to go from 1 hour to 45 minutes, whether that has actually been achieved, whether you hit 50 minutes or 40 minutes, where exactly you landed. Is it now good enough to be included in your standard processes? If it is, you update your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, and make it a part of your organization. Very, very similar to what you would do in a PDCA cycle. They just defined it different. This is the last one that I'd like to talk about, value stream mapping. I've included this here because this is something that I use on a day-to-day basis in my organization as well. So this has basis in the lean management philosophy. And once again, people who have spoken about, or people who have an interest and who have worked with lean management and lean Six Sigma, they would know this very well. What we try to achieve is, we once again want to make sure that each step, each process, each activity in our overall organization that we use to deliver services or to build value for the customer, we analyze each and every one of them, and we assign a particular value to those. When we assign a value, then we say, oh, and what do you mean by assigning a value? We want to make sure that the step that is being done is actually required or not, whether we want to do this step or not, whether this is required, is there any better way of doing it? If it is unavoidable, it cannot be removed, it has to be done, whether there is any other way of doing it quicker, whether there is any other software that I can do, whether I can retrain my team to get new skills with which they can do it much quicker than it is currently being done. The fascinating thing about this particular VSM is, and what I've observed during my time using it is, there is nothing sacrosanct. There is nothing which is left without touching. You can analyze each and every step in your organization, and everything can be assigned a value. You'd be surprised by some of the things that you can assign value to. But the whole concept, the whole point of trying to assign value to each step in your process helps you identify which are the ones which actually are going to be important, are going to be included, are actually causing an impact to the end value you deliver to your customers. Very fascinating. Once again, like I said, if anybody wants to want to know more about this, be happy to schedule a session sometime in the future. The last slide, CSI tips and tricks. I know we went quite a bit over than the time that I hope to go through, but CSI is a concept which is quite dear to my heart, and I start to share more than what I wanted to initially. Okay, CSI tips and tricks. CSI, like I said, the main purpose is to make sure the organization does not lose sight of what it is setting out to do, what its main goal is. Its main goal is to manufacture a product or deliver a service and earn profit from the act of manufacturing the good or providing the service. However, to stay in business, to stay ahead of the competition, to improve its profit margins by reducing costs, to increase its sales, to enhance customer satisfaction, in order to gain repeat customers, CSI is very important. So just trying to distill down some of the things that you can do while trying to do CSI. And CSI is sometimes can sometimes get tricky for certain people. You've heard of the phrase "missing the wood for the trees," right? So that is why I said the main focus should be on what your organization exists to do as an organization. So you try and make sure you stick to that to manufacture your product or deliver your service. Don't let CSI subsume yourself, right? That's why we harped upon the concept of continuous service improvement and continual service improvement. Continuous, you're on it all the time, but that just can't be the purpose of your business. Continual is why it matters. You do a improvement step, you stop, and if you remember, we measure the success over a period of time. We don't measure it and then kick off on the next step. We measure a period of time, then we embark on the next project in CSI. So some of the things that would be useful, that would help you out if you start off on the CSI journey. The most important one that I've listed above is start small. If you remember the concept of POC that we spoke about a little while earlier, target a small subset of your organization. Target a small sub process that you implement. For example, if your manufacturing process is 50 steps, target 5. See how it goes. See what you can improve about those 5. Then, once you've learned the lessons from the 5, expand the scope. Go to 15. Right? This is how you do. Start small, and this help you to address the things which are very easy to do, very simple, without a lot of cost. Start addressing them. What we refer to as the low hanging fruit. Don't be over ambitious. Don't try to shoot for the moon. The very steps at the very first step. Some of the people who've tried CSI and given up on it are people who are usually people who've tried to, who've just attended a course like this, or who've attended a talk like this, and or have undergone a certification in CSI. They're all gung-ho about it. Say, I really want to achieve the benefits of CSI. They start off huge, they stumble, and then they get a bad taste for it. They say never again. So don't go down that path. Try it at a very small level. Identify the benefits. You'll learn a lot of things about yourself as an organization. The kind of stumbles that you make, the kind of people that you thought could already had the skills to do it, but they lack. Maybe you need to retrain them, provide them a different set of skills so that they could be more successful. Things of that nature. They become apparent only when you actually embark on this journey. And to get the most of the journey, start small, take baby steps, and then expand the scope. The next thing, top management buy-in, absolutely necessary. Because many a time it's people at the ground level who know what needs to be done. They have these wonderful ideas, but by the time these ideas go up, like for example, it's always like a pyramid, right? You have a bunch of ideas. By the time that they go up to the management, they keep getting filtered, and the ones which actually reach up the management really don't have a lot of value. So the best way to do this is get the top management to buy in. The top management should say, yes, I am not satisfied with what we are doing right now. I am not satisfied with what we are producing right now, with our process right now. I want it to be improved. And this is my goal. I set this ambitious goal. You guys tell me how you are going to achieve it. So top management buy-in is very, very important. Not only to allow you to have that somebody has my back feeling, but also to be able to provide the budget or provide the flexibility for the team, saying that, okay, you're doing this manufacturing, but I'm also allowing you to take time off to attend meetings, to come up with these ideas, to come up with solutions, to track it, to come up with reports, to see what you can do about it. There could very well be an exclusive team who is not a part of the regular day-to-day producing team, whose sole focus is on CSI. But if your organization cannot afford to hire that many people on the outside, you can very well use some of the people who are doing the work on a day-to-day basis, but give them the flexibility, an hour a day, to participate in stand-up meetings to see how things are going, to take a check about where the action item list is, what still needs to be done. Whether somebody's trying to do something they're not getting through, you need some help escalating to the next level for that particular person. Very important. And for all of those, top management has to be a participant, has to be a stakeholder in this process. Third one, establish a formal team. Like I said, it would be very useful to have a formal team which is headed by a CSI manager and a group of people who are proficient in generating reports, analyzing trends, try to come up with things which are wrong, etc. But many a time, some of the organizations would not have the financial wherewithal to do things like these. So for that purpose, you can identify So suppose you have a team of 5 people, you can get one person out of that saying that, okay, I need you to dedicate 1 hour a day to CSI activity. Same way in another department, identify another person. Hey, you will keep aside 1 hour a day, and get these pool of people together saying that, okay, every day you guys will meet for a meeting from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. to see where we are. Things of that nature. Make sure that if you have established roles, they might not be permanent roles, but they have to be there has to be a team which is working on it. Need not be full time, but at least they have to have a certain portion of the day, and they have to have their roles very clearly defined. There has to be a person who's leading it, who's responsible for providing status updates, tracking it, pushing the team to achieve the goals. That will be the CSI manager. There has to be people who are very proficient in trying to gather data, trying to analyze data, generate reports. Very, very important. And there has to be teams who have experienced it, perhaps have been involved in CSI projects, and teams who are able to better appreciate how to assign value to certain processes, how to identify things which can be improved, or things which can be made redundant, etc. And the last one, very, very important, documentation. Very, very important. Because, like I said, it is a continuous process. And what you do each step of the way, make sure you have gathered as much data as possible, and document. Even in organizations that I have worked with, where I have been a CSI manager, even for report generation, I used to have something called RCIs, report creation instructions, where I would make the team list things like, okay, step number one, go to www. This particular URL. Number two, click on login, put username, password. Number three, click on file, select this particular option, or click on review, select this particular option. For source data, go here, go to this link, copy this column, paste it in this column, filter this way, or run a pivot list. So it would have detailed report creation instructions. And archive all these. When you move on to the next step, archive all of these suggestions and ideas, so that when you have to revisit it later on, because you would have because this is a continuous process, you would have CSI project number one, CSI project number two, 3, 50, 90. Suppose you are somewhere down the line and you want to revisit what happened in CSI 27. So you should still be able to go back and see who were part of it, what activities were done, what was the end result, and what was the next activity that was taken, whether the goals that you set out with in CSI 27 were achieved or not. Very, very important. All right, that's the discussion that I had for us today. I hope I did not go into too much detail. I hope not too many of you are yawning either. But that's it from me, Aisha. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Uh, can we stop the presentation? Thank you so much. That was like in-depth, detailed CSI. Literally, I felt like I'm in a training. And now anybody asks me what a continual service improvement is when compared to continuous, I will be able to answer them. So if you have any questions, folks, please write to us, leave a comment, and hopefully Kashif will answer them to you. But actually, what I got from this is it is so wonderful that it is not only identifying and executing, but also measuring, which becomes so important. Many businesses fail to do that. Like they identify, they execute, but they fail to analyze and measure those results if they're working or not. So this becomes so important. And when it comes to plan, do, check, and act, it's become my favorite now because you can use it in your daily life. You can use it even uh, for your mental health purpose. Like what you can do is plan. You can make your own mental health list, like what you want to improve on, right? So plan what you want to do, then actually do those things to improve your mental health, to reduce your stress, to reduce your anxiety, then act upon it. You're actually doing those things, and then check if those things are working for you. If they're not working, the last thing that you can do is act, go back, redo those steps, and come back, and you can have your peace of mind, right? Thank you so much, Kashif, for doing this for us. And we are going to be troubling you again and again for different webinars. And folks, like I said, if you have any questions, please let us know. And we will be back on Thursday with yet another webinar on doula this time. which tells you about what does a mother go through when she's pregnant and what is postpartum depression and how can you handle it. So thanks again and a very good night from us. Thank you, Kashif. Any last
Thank you
words?
for having me.
Thank you. Take care, all of you.